provide further analysis about the most recent updates concerning Germany's Chancellor Merz's messy path to power, which raises a lot of questions. We're joined from Berlin by Mr. Abdel Hashemi, a political analyst, and from Paris by Mr. Nicholas Meher-Frizeli, a World Bank former advisor and director of the EU ASEAN Centre. Thank you both for joining us here on Think Tank. Let's start off with Mr. Hashemi. How does Merz's initial parliamentary setback reflect the internal fractures within Germany's political landscape?
And to your audiences, in a way or another, today, this government that proved exceptionally that we should be reminded that such elections or the government came as a result of early elections that was conducted by the pressures of the public opinion, of the resentment by the previous coalition headed by Chancellor Merz. Certainly today, challenges are huge before the new government, and I think there are big fires, the first of which the domestic economic dossier and the great challenges that Germany is going through following the Ukrainian war. There is a fury of economic challenges such as the decrease of growth and shortage of the primary materials due to the boycott with Russia and the loss of Ukraine as the primary materials, along with tensions with China and USA. These are matters representing a great challenge as being always positively factor for the German economy and the political power. These factors, as we've said, has been transferred that a weakness, challenge that might affect the German economy. The coalition has already allocated 500 billion to infrastructure and restructuring the German army and to raise the level of military industry, and allocated 3% of the GDP as a percentage that should be pumped into the military industrialization. These matters that Germany indeed is in need for, but I think the fulfillment of such vows that might confront great fiscal challenges, and I think the domestic files, along with the foreign ones, are considered a great challenges before the new government. And up till now, as Merz, as a person, never was in a high process, and we can manage that a person such as Mr. to deal with such challenges amid of the circumstances that Germany is going through.
Okay, Mr. Frizeli, can we get your take on this? Obviously, Friedrich Merz is facing tremendous challenges when it comes to the German economy and many other files. But let's focus on the economy itself. How can he reverse Germany's declining economy and increase the growth in one of Europe's largest markets?
I'm delighted to join today. The short answer to your question is it's going to be very difficult, very, very difficult. And in politics, symbols often play a big part. And the fact that, in the history of Germany, he's the first chancellor who needed painfully to spend a full day in parliament to get, his mandate as chancellor confirmed, even though he actually spent the past 2 months cementing his coalition in detail, in a very bureaucratic, detailed German way. So he had all the votes, in his pocket, as they say in Germany, And yet, because the voting process is through a secret ballot, yesterday morning he was missing 6 or 7 MPs, which was really a shock. And so symbolically, he started on the wrong foot with a divided coalition. So that we'll speak about it maybe later, but his coalition is not very solid. It has internal divisions. And of course, timing is everything. And the timing is difficult because Germany is in the middle of an industrial, economic, financial slowdown. So the main issue for him is GDP growth, right? How can he jumpstart Germany's industrial machine? How can he kick off that sluggish, very weak, abnormally weak GDP growth and gets, the German economy to grow again? That's very difficult. And it's happening precisely when there's a huge trade war pitting America against China, and Germany in particular, and Europe in general, are kind of being crushed in the middle, in the crossfire between Beijing and Washington. So to make a long story short, once again, his job will be very, very complicated, not to mention the lingering war between Russia and Ukraine. And let's not forget that Germany has practically a little border in the northeast with Russia, so it's going to be complicated.
Okay, over to you, Mr. Shami. Now, you've heard Mr. Frizzelli there talking about the idea that things are very complicated, that the political landscape is fractured, and so on. And now, Merz, he has a fiscal discipline agenda and to address the German economy and the stagnation that's happening. How can he do this while also countering the rise of, right populism and addressing a fractured political landscape?
In fact, there is no doubt that this is a very important point, and that as there are great challenges to deal with such economic challenges inside, in light of a great rising by the far right in Germany, that today has a great number of the seats in the parliament in a percentage that not less as much of the governing party, and therefore, in light of the fracture within the party itself, as the elections in the first round never managed to get the majority to enable him to be a chancellor, and the non-voting of the members of his own party vis-a-vis the other party as considered as a very traditional partner, and as their numbers would equal to half of the seats in the parliament, but never gained, only put less than this number, which is 10%, as there is a great indicator of this direction, as Merz's policies aren't in favor of the members of his own party. So how could he sell his own economic agenda within the parliament and within the coalition in light of the presence of another party, such as the Social Democratic Party, as a rival in a way or another? And today they abandoned the role due to the popular pressure. Despite there is an alliance between them, but there is no doubt that he is considered as a very conventional and traditional component. So the consensus isn't in full between the two partners, so the challenges will be great and huge in taking decisions either in the parliament or in the coalitions among the opposition blocs. In addition, the Germany's stance isn't as it was before the Ukrainian-Russian war, that is suffering a great financial crisis, and as the world now is transferred to the multipolarized one, and new powers are rising to be great competitors into Germany, such as in China or in Asia. In Germany is a need for a power even more than it was in the past before the Ukrainian-Russian war. So its ability to be competitive with the new economic powers in Asia, even the competitiveness as America isn't an ally anymore, but as a contender. So, in addition, the historic relations with Russia and all these compounded are challenges for militaries to lay down solutions. Up till now, we never heard any real thing to indicate that he has plans, let's say, to have a great influence in the context of such files and challenges.
Okay, Mr. Fazeli, now if we could take your take on a different topic here now, moving on to green energy and so forth. How might Merz's stance on green energy investments align or challenge France's vision when it comes to EU-wide climate initiatives?
Great question. Allow me just to correct my own mistake from the previous question.
Sure.
When I mentioned that Russia had a border with Germany, I meant it symbolically. So that small Russian enclave called Kaliningrad, which actually has a border with Poland, what I meant to say, it's only 300 or 400 kilometers east of the German border. So Russian troops are very close to the German border, so it's adding to the psychological pressure that
yes.
some in Germany have, the phobia about Russia. Back to your question, I think in general, so broad brush, like in very general broad brush terms, Merz and Macron are quite aligned when it comes to the climate change thing. So none of them is a fanatical, climate change, purist, or like some in Germany, the Green Party in Germany, which today is weaker than it was 3 months ago, but still has an influence. And the Social Democrats, who are equal partners in the new coalition, so in the new government led by Friedrich Merz, half the portfolios, half the ministries are in the hands of the Social Democrats, even though they are much smaller now than the center-right party of Merz. He was forced to give them, an incommensurate size of his government's portfolio. So these people, the Social Democrats inside the new German government, they are more hardline and they are more, focused on environmental climate change issues than Merz himself. Macron is more like Merz, but the problem now is that in the new government, because half the important ministerial portfolios are in the hands of the Social Democrats, probably Merz will need to act or behave as if he was a little more green than Macron. But these are like shades of green. There is no real divergence between them when it comes to climate finance, fighting climate change, etc.
So they'll relatively be aligned then?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Shami, you've heard Mr. Fazeli there. He talked about, the idea of the differences within the coalitions and instability in general when it comes to the political landscape. What impact could this have on Merz's ability to implement critical domestic reforms like energy security, as well as immigration policy and many other things?
There is no other choice but the consensus. Germany started to go into a state of risks unless if there is no bailout plan to save Germany of the repercussions that came firstly by the Ukrainian war. We should not forget also there are crises that preceded the Ukrainian war and before the fiscal crisis in 2009. So there is a series of successive problems that Germany suffered, but the full-blown of the Ukrainian war, for many reasons, as we said, that led to a very stagnant financial crisis and a great decline in the growth, and several German corporations being corrupt, and the inability of finding alternative of the resources coming from Russia and Ukraine, and even in China, in a way or another, their ties has been deteriorated with USA, that they not ally anymore, and the internal consensus between the two contenders to a great scale, if they need to survive, that should be in place, not only between the members of the coalition, but the other parties as the alternative party, to tackle in a logic of the political competitiveness, but to build the state in a way or another in order to have a real opportunity for rebuilding Germany once again. So the laid down plan is in place. Germany has the ability, as politicians and expertise know very well what Germany is in needed, and to come out of such a deadlock. But the ability isn't than before, but this does not mean that Germany cannot be seen as incapable, but is able to lay down a bailout plan to regain and a greater strength of its power, and to manage to bypass this problem of minimum casualties. There is no doubt challenges will be ahead of them. A state of stagnation as or disciplined financial policy, as announced by Merz, and as the German institutions and the streets are feeling, but this is the only way to cross such a problem.
Okay, Mr. Fazeli, given what you had discussed earlier with us about, Germany feeling, a certain sense of unease, given the closeness of Russia to its borders, as well as Merz's decisions to support Ukraine with advanced missiles and increase Germany's military capabilities, how can Merz protect Germany's credibility as a global power, and does this, move signal Germany's fear of, the Russian side?
Very good question. And here is the paradox of the new German government. And here's why, probably, unless a miracle happens, you never know, but unless a miracle happens, I'm not very optimistic for Germany in the short, medium term. And so, in my opinion, the reasons of failure, why I'm pessimistic, are the same in foreign policy, national security, as they are in finance and economics. Same reasons, for very simple reason. There's a lot of continuity between what Friedrich Merz will do and the previous German governments of the past 4 or 5 years, even though German voters 2 months ago voted for the opposite. So it's really strange here, because when it comes to NATO, NATO, the Russia-Ukraine war, there will be continuity with what his predecessor did. And when it comes to the financial and economic policy also, why? The same reason. They are, quote unquote, too many SPD, social democrat members of the coalition government. Let's remember, 2 months ago, the SPD, the center-left party, they only got 16 or 15% of the votes. Yet today, in the new German government, 50% plus of the ministries are in their hands. And if we look at 2 important ministries when it comes to Russia and the Ukraine war and the economy, who is the minister of defense now? The only surviving minister from the previous government, and that is very interesting, it is Boris Pistorius, the all-powerful defense minister. He's a socialist, he's a pro-NATO social democrat. He will have a huge influence in the new German government. And of course, that's even more interesting, the new finance minister, who is also vice chancellor of the whole government, his name is Lars Klingbeil. He's also a center-left social democrat, pro-NATO, and not very business friendly. You know, and sadly, or in my opinion, to jumpstart the German economy, they need much better relations with Russia, and they need pro-business policies.
Yes.
And now they have just the opposite. So it will be very difficult for Friedrich Merz to turn around
navigate this.
Germany, in my opinion.
Yes, thank you so much for that. But unfortunately, we're out of time. So that was Mr. Abdelmajid Shami, a political analyst, and Mr. Meher Nicholas Frizzelli, World Bank former advisor and director of the EU ASEAN Centre. Thank you both for your insights, and thank you for joining us here on Think Tank.